Well, greetings, investors. Welcome to our end of May 2024 Investing Roundtable. This is that annual Echo or Encore session. We did a roundtable live at the Better Investing National Convention last week, just a week ago, and had a really nice time. We'll show you a picture of that audience here in a few minutes. But the convention is it's a time of renewal and getting re-energized and all kinds of stuff. I'll ask the participants for their comments on it. Also, well, joining me here tonight, uh, I believe she's back in Florida and kicking her heels up and having a good time. Kim Butcher.
Yep, I'm here. My feet are kicked up and I'm sitting back and relaxing.
Back safely watching the cruise lines go out. And
there's hardly any cruise ships going out now from here, but I might have to turn the TV on since the Florida Panthers are in the playoffs.
There you go. Then we're also joined by Matt Spielman from Houston. Matt was a first-time attendee at the convention and actually gave a presentation and participated in this roundtable. And Matt, seemed like you had a pretty good time. How are you tonight, sir?
I had an excellent time. Definitely worth a few days recovery. I'm glad they're only annual or biannual for the in-person one, but I can't wait till the next one.
Fantastic. And last but not least, my dear colleague, the magical, magnificent mathematician of Michigan, Ken Kavula.
Hi, everybody. Glad to be with you. Matt's the tall guy next to the short guy in the flowered shirt. So if you're trying to figure out who's who, and Kim is in the front row, and Kim, we put you next to tall people as well, didn't we? Okay.
She is the centerpiece. Good stuff.
I don't know about that.
And for those of you that don't know, Ken teaches nonstop. He runs the beginner boot camp during the entire session. He had 1 hour off during the entire convention, and wow, I think some serious decompression was probably involved, Ken.
I really enjoyed, Mark. I haven't taught like that in a number of years, and I found out I still had the stamina to make it happen, although you're absolutely right. It took about 2 days of solid sleeping to get back in shape again, all right? When we got home Sunday, all the way through Tuesday morning, things were up in the bedroom most of the time, so.
All right, well,
I enjoyed myself, though. Yeah.
Last official bit of business. Cy Lynch wanted to be with us here tonight, but he's actually at a Hall of Fame reception for the Atlanta Braves, and that schedule conflict. So he chose the Braves over us tonight. So keep that in mind the next time you vote. We have an audience vote.
Now he asked us not to roast him, Mark, and not to hang him in effigy. Okay.
Well,
so
he knows better. He knows
neither better. One, Mark. Neither one. Okay.
And Hugh McManus is on a plane back from Singapore, so he's unable to join us tonight. He really does hope to be with us next week. But again, thanks to all the contributors shown on that slide. Let's go ahead and get rolling. You guys all know this drill. We're going to talk about real companies in real time, but absolutely no investment recommendation is intended. This is an educational demonstration. We are basically taking the lessons learned by the modern investment club movement, interpreting them and sharing them. It involves the discovery and the analysis of stock study opportunities and the deployment into a portfolio, which we also take care of. We have a tracking portfolio here. So you're going to hear our opinions. Please do your own homework before making any decision. If we own something in a personal portfolio, we'll try to remember to let you know about that. You can take off the event reminder. We're going to show you a different way to do that here in a second. But if you want copies of the slides, or if you have follow-up questions, our 2 email addresses are there at the bottom of the page. Anything else you'd like to add here, Ken?
No, you can still communicate with Natalie if you want to say hi or thank her for all the work she does, but an easier way to get onto our guest list and to be reminded about these roundtable programs and any other programs that we're doing in mid-Michigan, and we do quite a few of them. An easier way is to go to that blue URL right in the kind of the middle of the page right there. That's the Better Investing Chapters Mid-Michigan page. And then once you get to that page, scroll down. You have to scroll down, and you'll eventually come to this little form right here. It's so easy to fill out. They want your email address, your first name, your last name, and your postal zip. And when you fill that out and then hit subscribe, you'll be added to our guest list. And from that point on, we'll talk to you once a month. We promise, only one email a month. And we'll be telling you the dates of the roundtable, any other programs we're doing, and giving you links where you can register for any of those programs. It takes you 30 seconds or so to add yourself to our guest list. And then anytime you decide you don't want to be on that guest list anymore, at the bottom of all of our emails is a place where you can unsubscribe if you choose to.
Okay. Well, here's a look at the audience in Chicago. We're not going to tell you how they voted until we're done here, but they saw 3 of the 4 presentations, and I'm actually going to switch mine out because I think I can get more votes with tonight's presentation than the one I made in Chicago.
The room looks a lot more organized than it really was. It was really a very crowded room. They didn't anticipate we were going to draw the crowd that we did. This is about 100 people or so sitting in the room here. And Mark is missing the people in the very front because we weren't seated in the very front here. So, but a really, really attentive audience, very much interested in what we were doing, and really involved with the whole thing that's been going on with the roundtable now for almost 15 years. Very pleasant to be there at this particular session.
Good stuff. Good audience. Great audience. All right, here's a quick look at our performance results to date. And we basically graph the answer to the question, how much did you beat the market by? That's what we mean by the relative return. You take the rate of return, that is an annualized rate of return since inception. That would be going all the way back to 2010. And the rate of return is 16.8%. If you had instead invested in a Wilshire 5000 index fund, same amounts of cash flows and everything else, that would have been an 11.9% return. 16.8 minus 11.9 gives you that relative return. The answer to the question, positive 4.9%. We are aiming for +5, and you can see that we're kind of hovering around that golden objective, and have been doing it for quite some time, despite some challenges from a few of the stocks in the portfolio here over the last several months. So full steam ahead, and that minus 3.1 is the average relative return for a commercial mutual fund, minus 3% relative to the market, just as a point of comparison. So we are trying to beat the Wilshire 5000 by more than 5%. We'd also like to see about half of our selections outperform the market over the same time frame. 55%, according to Joel Tillinghast, would be a great thing to shoot for. And we have stumbled a little bit down into the 47% range.
Yeah, I'd love to see us get back up at least over 50 again. That would be really nice. So,
well, I'm going to do my part here tonight. So
pick good stocks, folks. Okay.
All right. Just a couple slides that we shared with the audience in Chicago. This was actually an extract from my presentation on selling discipline. It was an update of a presentation that Ken and I had made jointly a couple years ago, and I just updated it. This is the answer to the question, all of the gyrations, and sometimes it's torture. There's no other way to describe it. Even with the stocks in the tracking portfolio, there is some degree of emotional attachment to them, even though we do our best to brush that aside. So selling is never easy. And then you also get the questions from time to time, you sold stock A, and after you sold it, it went up 30%. And, you can't look at them as one-piece decisions. You got to look at the aggregate performance. Our aggregate performance actually generates a return of 16.8%. And then I just simply asked the question, what if we hadn't made any sell decisions other than the ones that you have to do, thanks to acquisitions or that type of thing. And
or the company disappears.
We've had a couple of those, or the company disappears. Yep. Buy and forget would have delivered 12.8, and that is a massive difference between the two. It's the answer to the question, why do we attempt to achieve that selling discipline, which can be a challenge. But we try to stick to it, and we don't have to get carried away, but every little bit seems to help. Any questions or comments?
No, we're smoothly running right now, Mark, so let's keep going through the slides and get to our stock presentations.
All right, here's that slide we never get tired of because it gives you, especially if you're working with younger investors or people that are novices just getting involved. In fact, some people that are scared to death of investing and don't exactly know where to start. This is just our track record. We have now made over 800 selections. Every time we make a decision, whether it's a knighted damsel or the audience, we put $1,000 into that decision. The rate of return, as we said on the previous slide, since inception is 16.8. What we discover is that approximately 30%, 259 of the selections have values less than $1,000, either closed out positions, those realized ones, or the current ones unrealized. Like, for example, we made 7 selections in Chicago, 6 of them are sitting at 990. So those would count among those 259, even though they're just barely out of the starting block. The cumulative loss for all of those 259 positions is $76,534. And we like to point out that the gains from Microsoft alone, that's our largest position, $5,000 invested in Microsoft is now worth $109,000. So therefore the gain is $104,000. And that just completely absorbs and obliterates all 259, and I'm doing air quotes, Ken, losses. And again, every time I show this slide, I think it's a slide that can be used to persuade somebody that maybe there should be less fear. What are we afraid of? Any other thoughts, Ken?
No, I'm answering questions here busily, Mark, so I'm listening to what you're saying with one ear, and I tend to agree with all of it so far.
Okay.
I guess the only word that I might add to the whole thing is you only have to hit an occasional home run to really stay in the game. And Microsoft for us has definitely been a home run. We've hit 4 or 5 of them in the round table, but we only needed the one to balance out everything else, as you can see from the numbers that we just showed you here.
All right, so let's take a look at the actual portfolio. This is the top 20 positions currently. If you want to review all of the active positions, you can go to that URL up at the top. That is a public link. You don't need to subscribe to anything. It's a public link that you can just Google and get to. And these are the top 20 by percent of total assets or simply by their value, ranked from number 1 to number 20. And the legend on the right is the number of times a position has been selected. So as we said, this number for Microsoft is the result of being selected 5 times, and you find that right here. So you can see that Microsoft 5 times is $5,000. That has become 109. So anywhere down the list, you can see how many dollars were invested and what the current value is. The one that we often point out is Costco. They report earnings later this week. That's a one-time selection in Costco that is now worth $17,000. And we kick ourselves monthly that we should have picked it another time along the way, at least once.
At least one more time, right?
But these things happen. There is one position that will probably become challenged in the next month or two unless something unusual happens. With a 2% return, we'll probably take a look at Universal Display. It does have a fairly robust growth. That might save it from the cutting block. But we will be taking a closer look at the portfolio management. That selling discipline I just talked about. Probably next month.
From my own investment clubs, they've been watching NVIDIA, obviously, like a lot of folks in the investing world have been doing. And all I have to say is that I don't think the analysts have any idea what the growth of NVIDIA is going to be and what a reasonable PE is going forward. And this is just a best guess situation. Mark is showing from Y charts the growth of just under 20%, but recently after NVIDIA reported earnings, you've heard growth numbers that have exceeded 40 or even 50%. So where it's actually going to end up being, and and at what PE is a wide open debate. So take that 4.2 over on the right there with a big grain of salt. We're not quite sure about where that one really belongs at the moment.
And we also talked at great length during that selling discipline discussion about George Nicholson's firm admonition that if a company is growing faster than 10% and you're holding it in your portfolio, you should be very slow to sell it. In other words, really give it some room to run and be careful about selling too early. Again, that's for a double-digit growth rate company, and then NVIDIA certainly applies. Matt, I'm wondering, you had mentioned to me a few days ago that you were worrying or wondering about NVIDIA running up against capacity constraints because they don't actually build the chips, but you were suggesting that perhaps Taiwan Semi and others were looking at some limitations. Can you expound on that, or you want to?
Well, I have no data, but I do have some experience in the semiconductor industry, right? And semiconductor fabs, as you can tell, it's not just waiting for government subsidies that makes them take a long time. They take a long time. So Taiwan Semiconductor has a certain capacity, and as these chips add to the demand as opposed to just replace other things, that's going to be eaten up. Now, given the prices NVIDIA can command, I'm sure they can pay up for any kind of extra capacity they want, but it may actually come into capacity constraints for other, let's say, more frugal buyers. What I had in mind, and again, there's no data for this, this is my imagining, is thinking again about the automakers, right? So their chips are generally lower complexities. They're on entirely different equipment, but as newer equipment sort of replaces in, and as they continue to strive to go toward electric and autonomous, they may run into some supply chain issues as well, or any other industry in a downturn. If they give up their slot, they may find when they return to bid that NVIDIA's already got it all.
Yeah, at a premium, which makes it harder to dislodge them on the way back in through the door. So wow,
right,
could be some fun.
Yeah, that's all sort of not even speculation, just sort of thinking through what would happen in that case.
Mark, I'm going to try to answer two questions. Actually, I'm going to try to deflect one question and answer another. We're getting some questions about the green numbers. Those are par values, potential annualized return numbers that are in what we call the sweet spot. And the sweet spot is just 5% percentage points above the market average. In an average year, the average return for the stock market is about 10%, so the sweet spot would start at 15. Our average return calculation right now is based on the Manifest Investing database, and it's around 9% right now for the stocks in that database, which means our sweet spot for this year, or for this moment at least, starts around 14%. And then Mr. Nicholson indicated that beating the market by more than 10 points was a fool's errand. Very difficult to do and could not really be maintained for any long period of time. So we define the top of the sweet spot as 10 points above average. So right now, if the average for Manifest is 9, then our sweet spot is 14 to 19, and that's the green numbers. You go above 19 and you get a yellow background, which indicates it might be too good to be true. We're looking at Ardelyx right here, a very low-priced drug company, where those of you that have been with us for a couple of years are very familiar with Ardelyx. Notice its EPS stability, notice its quality ranking. This is definitely a non-core stock. The other question that I'm going to deflect is, how is the quality number derived? I would suggest that if that's really interesting you, that you drop a line to Mark at manifestinvesting.com. He'll show you how you can get a trial subscription if you're not already a Manifest subscriber. And in that trial subscription, there's a number of articles that in detail explain how he derives his quality ranking for any of the stocks that we're showing right there. Blue That's the top quintile, 80th percentile or above, and we're striving to keep the weighted average quality in this portfolio at 80 plus. And you can see that this particular largest holdings list is full of 80 plus quality stocks.
Very, very high quality companies, without a doubt.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, and Ardelyx is a speculation. It's one that we have featured for some time, and goes back, you're not going to believe this, goes back almost 7 years to the first mention by Hugh McManus.
Yep.
And they finally got their FDA approval last October and went from $1 to almost $10, and then they've come back to $6.75. There are a number of us that consider it a core holding in our play portfolios. And
I will,
I'm certainly one of those.
I will tell you that if you're looking to use this list to come up with some ideas, when you find a really high quality rating and a green number next to it, that gives you a list of 4 or 5 good stocks to, especially if you're a beginning investor, gives you 4 or 5 really good ideas to start studies on. A blue quality rating, you know, even above 90, if you will, and then a green number right next to it indicates a stock that Manifest feels might be something that would be interesting to add to a portfolio.
Yeah, and if you want to take a look at, if you want to have some fun, here's some homework for you. Go here and then click on the quality or the par column, and it'll sort them. I'm pretty sure it does it for even a public display. And in that case, you will be looking at all, there must be 60 or 70 companies on that list that are in the active portfolio with values less than $8,000. Okay?
Okay, I'm getting asked, what's the name of one of the articles that describes quality? And I'm thinking to myself, is it Oh Captain, My Captain? Is that the article, Mark?
The best one to go to is just Google Manifest Investing and the word, do not use the word quality because that'll give you a mountain of hits. Use the word excellence. The word excellence, if you just Google on that, Manifest Investing Excellence, you will get the article which talks about quality being ranked. And the nutshell answer is we do quality exactly the same way or very, very similar to Benjamin Graham and George Nicholson's definitions, which basically matched each other. And we score 4 components into that quality ranking. And it's been pretty good to us over the years. Okay?
Yeah, let's keep on moving if we can here, Mark.
All right, we have an algorithm. I can't figure out how this hot dog keeps ending up in our roundtable presentations. That is Portillo's hot dog, and Ken got his baptism on the way to the National Convention in Downers Grove, Illinois. And
I'm proud of you, Ken. Up straight and parallel, even there.
I'll tell you, folks, they put a lot of stuff on that hot dog, okay?
Kevin Gologly clarified that in Chicago, you run your hot dog through the garden, and that's how you end up with that.
All right.
All right. Well, Ken, you have been baptized. All right. So with that, Ken.
Phil is telling you, Mark, that there are no emotional attachments to any stocks in this group of presenters, okay?
You think?
All right.
I almost brought Portillo's tonight.
There might be a lot of jokesters in this group.
Right.
Portillo's is under $10. I mean, we should just go to an audience vote right now.
Keep clicking slides, Mark. Here we go.
All right, go.
Well, I'm going to present Monster Beverage. Looks like I'm first up in the presenters tonight. And one more click, Mark. This is a short presentation, a very short presentation. I'm choosing Monster because I was looking for something in consumer defensive category. I've been listening to a lot of the pundits and reading some books on my own, and they all seem to agree that the time to buy consumer discretionary is not when the economy begins its downturn, whenever that might be, but it's to load up on a couple of really good ones while the going is good and while a lot of the consumer defensive stocks might still be affordable. So I think Monster Beverage fits that category. It is a worldwide condiment or beverage or whatever you want to call it, and it has many, many brands, and that's something that I didn't know until I started looking at it carefully. Next slide. Here's where it's distributed. Everywhere in red, it's being distributed by the Coca-Cola Bottling Company. So it has a really established, experienced name behind its, not only its creation and manufacture, but its distribution. There are two major places on this map where you'll see that the color is kind of dark. Coca-Cola does not distribute Monster in those two countries. Monster is sold in those two countries. The distribution is by other means other than Coca-Cola bottling. But you can see that in so much of the world, we're getting Monster Beverage being sold, even in places where you might not anticipate any sales happening at all. Next slide. I mentioned they have lots of slides. Lots of brands. And you can see the different brands off to the left of this slide right here. Most of those names I am completely, utterly unfamiliar with. And you can see that the brands are very popular in various places throughout the world. Monster, for example, is the primary brand down around Australia and New Zealand and places like that. But you move into Africa and they're looking at Power Play or something called Burn, which is the most popular thing. You move up to Europe and Burn stays very popular, but there's another one called BPM that is also very popular in the British Isles. You move into North America and we know that we have Monster, but I wasn't aware that there were other brands that were popular, and that F brand, that Full Throttle, seems to gain in popularity the further south you go in the Americas. So depending on where you are geographically, that determines a lot about which brand is going to achieve preeminence as far as Monster is concerned. Next slide. Reign, which is a brand Target beverage, a brand new brand, is taking off in Europe. It's also something that's being introduced with a lot of vigor in the English-speaking parts of North America and in Chile and Brazil, as well as in parts of the Caribbean, especially those with ties to the United States. You also might notice that one little dot off to the right, that's Guam, which is a U.S. protectorate. But basically, Reign is something that they're going to try to be marketing in Europe and in North America, with a little bit of emphasis in the big countries of Brazil, Chile, and I did read that they'll be moving into Argentina very soon. Next slide. Here's some of the lower cost brands that Monster Beverage puts out there. And you might notice that the lower cost brands are being marketed in places where people do not have the amounts of resources that we have in North America, or we might have if we lived in Europe or even Australia or New Zealand. Lower incomes calls for a lower priced brand, and that's where Predator and Fury come into the mix. Next slide. All kinds of things. They are taking a very minor step into alcoholic beverages. They market using sports heroes, just like you would expect, but they market using sports heroes that are heroes in the country where the marketing is going on. So most of us probably do not know Zhang well. She's a UFC starweight champion, but the people where it's being marketed know her very well. The same thing with the gold medalist in the 2022 Olympics, Su Yinyang. She's not probably somebody that we would see as a star. We don't know her very well, but beginning marketing in a serious way in China. The green color is places where it's already having a lot of potential sales, a lot of actual sales, I should say. And the yellow is where they're just beginning to launch the different types of beverages, and they're anticipating sales to be as robust as they are in the green areas. It takes a couple of years to build up the sales and to build up the popularity, and Monster is an extremely aggressive marketer. Even in the US, you'll find Monster being marketed in all kinds of unique ways, especially to their target audiences of people from the age of around 14, 15 up into their late 30s or early 40s. It's not exactly targeted at people my age and the age of a lot of the people in our audience. Next slide. It's a nice example, I think, of a company that especially if you discount the pandemic years of 21 and 22, I think it obviously shows the up, straight, and parallel characteristics of its consumer discretionary stock. I'm choosing sales growth of 12% and earnings growth of 14%, and those numbers are well within the reasonable range of all of the analyst community that I've researched. Next slide. I've chosen PEs that match very closely the PE values coming from the 5-year historic averages, and I think that when they give me an average PE of about 32, with value lines suggesting the average to be around 40, and with manifest suggesting the 5-year average to be around 28, I think my 32 is in good company, and it's kind of leaning towards the more conservative of the two numbers. Notice I'm getting a buy from my zoning with those two choices of PE values that are very close to the high average and the low average. Next slide. Those judgments that I just outlined to you give me a stock appreciation of somewhere between 13 and 17.5%. Value line says that I should expect 13 to 18% appreciation over the next 3 to 5 years. And manifest gives me a 5-year average appreciation number of 14.5. All in all, I think that they're all in the same ballpark. I feel that the stock study that I'm doing is very reasonable. It's getting validated by a lot of other sources. And I think that these numbers will pull some of the numbers that we need to pull higher in our roundtable portfolio. Specifically, this is higher than our sales number is right now for the sales that I've chosen. And the par is coming in higher than the par for the portfolio, with the possibility of being a little even higher than I would anticipate. All in all, I think Monster is a good choice for the portfolio, and I'm going to put in my $1,000 there, and I would suggest maybe you could find a way to, some of you could vote for this one as the one that we'll add from the audience. Whoever's next should be going.
That would be me. And I'm feeling a little bit dated here. I'm sitting here drinking clearly Canadian water, sparkling water beverage. So none of that Monster stuff. Really kind of tame, but it's good stuff from the Canadian.
What's your age, Mark?
Well, put it this way: I'm fighting off Medicare Advantage phone calls. You guys all know what that is. All right. Here are some screening results. I basically just went out and grabbed some companies that were ranked fairly highly with respect to their return forecast. That's the projected annual return and the quality rating. And so those are all in that upper quintile that Ken was talking about, all excellent companies. And we can kind of begin our hunt from the top of that list, working our way down. I just kind of go through and look for things that bother me and maybe would be kicked out. Like I kind of like Hanover Insurance, but this is a kind of an outlier. For one thing, this is the analyst consensus estimate, price to fair value. And you can see that they're usually pretty optimistic. I would even say exuberant about most of the companies they cover. This is the only one above 100%. So the analyst consensus does not think that Hanover's on sale. So that one's gone. We also learned in our selection of the best small companies for this year that sometimes you keep one eye on what the sales expectations are for 2024 versus 2023. You can see here's a downdraft in mode. Now they have some special challenges. Good company, nothing wrong with it, but maybe they are going to continue to languish with what's going on over there right now. So we'll get rid of that one. The next one disappears because it's Chinese. And I have nothing against the Chinese. I'm just not in the mood right now. And so Lululemon, kind of a modest return here at 8%. Morningstar thinks it's a little bit overvalued. Great company, an easy choice, probably beat up right now based on that relative strength index, but just doesn't energize me. So I'm working my way down the list here. Again, this 1% over here, that's not enough. And we come down to this NAIC company. NAIC, the ticker symbol is actually NAIC. And the return 17%, 14 based on the prove. It's showing us perhaps oversold. Good return here, among the best according to Value Line. These two numbers check pretty well. Pretty good across the board. One of the higher sales numbers for year over year for the expectations. And I just like these numbers in general a little bit more than the company I presented in Chicago, although I really like that company. That's right down here. And Gentex has been 8 or 9 times selection for the round table portfolio, so I thought I would go out looking for a company that is not yet in the round table tracking portfolio, and that would be NAIC. All right, here's a look at the company. They started back about 30 years ago as a software company running call centers. So they are literally in the engagement with customers over the phone and in meetings. And they basically have built an extremely interesting business around that over the last several years. And they are very highly regarded. You're going to see who they work for and how that has all come to pass. But they basically have been a bunch of smart people learning to use processes and data, and that's just to seek optimum solutions for their clients. And they've been doing a heck of a good job for the last 20 or 30 years. So they get high marks. They also branched out into financial crime and compliance. That would be the people who catch the people out there, the fraudsters that are abusing your credit card or doing unauthorized transactions in your banking or credit accounts. And they are part of the network that actually catches them. Not going to go into the story, but I talked to one of these guys just today. So, wow. And then they're also working with local police on optimizing response to people who need help. This is a quick sample of the companies that they partner with to basically roll out some of these solutions and embed them within client organizations. You will recognize a lot of the companies on that list, including some of these, some of Cy Lynch's favorites. If Cy was here, he would be busily trying to figure out which one of these we should buy tonight. All of those information technology services companies could even sneak in some of the ones in the box down below it. So they, again, working with a lot of people that we know and recognize. Here are some of their end customers. You can see they work with a lot of health insurance companies, 10 out of the top 10 health insurance companies, 5 out of the 5 top telecommunications companies, 9 out of the top 10 financial services companies, and 6 of the top Fortune 10. In fact, they work for 85 of the top 100 Fortune companies. And again, many, many names on here that are very familiar to all of us. Here's kind of an interesting moment. As I became familiar with the company, I went out searching for a few things just to learn a little bit more about them. And this is their chief executive officer. He was, at the time, was 47 years old. He had worked for the company for 25 years at the time. So I figured he started when he was 12. So he's been around for quite a while. And here he is appearing with Mr. Kramer to talk about his company. And the thing that I kind of took away from this, first of all, he presented very well, very capable, very good presentation. They've been working on AI for a very long time compared to most of the companies that are talking about it today. And just like Ken's presentation of XLS Services, the consulting firm, they're actually doing it. They've been doing it for years. So they've been doing artificial intelligence before it was cool. And what is fascinating about it, and this is actually behind the NVIDIA price spike in drivers also, the addressable market for all this stuff is basically increasing at 10 to 20%. That's a conservative estimate for the next 5 to 7 years. That's how much their addressable market is expanding. So they are going out, capturing new customers, and their retention of existing customers. You just heard it, 85 of the top 100 in the Fortune 100, they retain 88% of those. So their customer retention is huge. And again, I just point out that this is from 6 years ago, and artificial intelligence. They were talking about it back then before everybody else is talking about it. Now, I do have a confession. When I was looking over this slide and looking over the company a few weeks ago, I presented it on one of our panel sessions for a Mid-Michigan conference. The one concern I would have would be if the CEO left the company. Been with them for 25 years, since the age of 22, a lifer, and 2 weeks ago he announced his resignation as CEO. So that was a bit of a surprise. I do think that the market has probably overreacted to that a little bit. That's going to be my thesis anyhow. And I think it'll be interesting to see if this has given us a price opportunity as a result of that situation. Here's a quick look at the value line page for the company. They are covered in the standard edition. You can see that the stock price was $254. That was literally just a month ago. It dropped down into the high 100s, 190s-ish, fairly recently following that resignation announcement. So you can see the total return back here was 10 to 22%. That was at this price. So when we look at some of the other stuff, I just want you to notice that. I do also like, this is not a triple play. I would expect their maturing PE to be somewhere near what it is today, but I do like the steadiness of the operating margins, and their net profit margins have shown really good strength. That number out on the far right might be a little bit high, but maybe not. Showing good strength, good progress, and again, serving some pretty good customers and making some decent transitions. Very competitive environment, though. They have had some stock price challenges of the last couple of years. You can see that the price has been relatively stagnant going back on this long-term chart. Here's a total look at the company. I would draw your attention down at the bottom because thesis number one is literally when we see that pattern of a stock price showing a general downward tendency at the time that we have very formidable strength from sales and earnings, definitely going in the right direction, and the stock price going in the other. All that means is that this company is getting steadily more attractive over time. That, of course, is captured right here. As that stock price has languished, but the operating results have been strong, the projected annual return has actually been increasing over time, and it is at a multi-year high right now. So you're basically talking about a $2.5 billion company growing at 11 to 12% with earnings in the 16 to 18% range, a PE ratio down around 20. Using those assumptions, you get a return forecast in the mid-teens, and it all checks out pretty well. Projected return on value is also a good reconciliation of that. So you're looking at a pretty good situation here. Increase in quality. The changeover in the corner office is probably something that they will handle pretty well. He's going to stick around as CEO for the rest of this calendar year and a good part of 2025. So it's not happening overnight. The stock price dip that you see on the far right is a result of that announcement. So literally it's gone from 260 down to 190 in that time frame. The company, again, seems to be firing on all cylinders. Very highly regarded. I like the company. So when you file into the voters booth tonight to cast your ballot in the audience poll, I would just like you to be nice. Can I do that, Ken? Can I say that?
Yes, you can, Mark. Okay.
All right. So with that, we'll switch to Kim Butcher. Kim handed in 4 different stocks for her one stock out in Chicago last week, starting with Diageo, and that's where this slide came from. And then she settled on.
Well, we all, we all need a drink to start the evening because you got to make a decision. But ultimately, I passed on Diageo and I went to, next slide, RenaissanceRe stock, RNR. The reason I went with this stock, next slide. I asked the question because we had 2 days before we had bank, there was an announcement that Buffett had bought Chubb Insurance. And it triggered my mind to say, oh my goodness, I don't know about the rest of you. How many here have had their car or their homeowner insurance go up? I mean, somebody's making money because I can guarantee you mine. Insurance on both the place I live in as well as my car insurance have dramatically just gone up. So Buffett chose that stock, and I thought, is there something else within the industry that would be interesting for a stock pick to do a presentation on? Next slide. Okay, this is an insurance company that focuses on catastrophe and it's reinsurance. It can be weather-related stuff, malpractice stuff. They have specialty segments like malpractice. They have casualty stuff. They also have the corporate expense, capital servicing costs, all this coverage of insurance, but it's reinsurance, so it's covering something as a second level. Next slide. I found that they had just a couple weeks beforehand had announced that they were going to increase their quarterly dividend, and it's going to be paid out on June 14th if you own the stock by it's payable to if you own the stock June 14th, on June the 28th, you're going to get 39 cents a common share for the dividend. And they also authorized buying back more shares of up to 500 million, which includes the remaining amounts that under the prior authorization. So they must think that their shares are undervalued right now, because that's hopefully why any company buys back their shares. So let's go on to the next one. Next slide.
Are you showing the value on? Oh, go ahead.
When I look, yeah. The stock here was at $234.97 when the value line came out. Today it closed at $228. 2 weeks ago it closed at $229, as the slide says, and it had a PE of the trailing 12 months of 4.96. So let's look at what the PE ratio is in the middle of the slide of the value line sheet. 6.5. That was the current PE when the price was 234. Okay, we're $5 less. Average is 17. Obviously, we have some room for capital appreciation there. If Mark will go over to the 2027, 2029 projection box, when I looked at the value line, this is what got me really interested, because the low annual return was 13% to 24%. That's a lot of growth there, folks. And if the average PE currently is at less than 5, and on average it's 6.5, and I just found that CIPRA has a report out saying that they think the stock price, the PE going forward, can get up to like 6.5, and then I'll tell you later what they say about their earnings. So they think it's undervalued as well. So if you look at the stock price, it looks like if it can go all the way up, you can get a 13% gain per year, yearly, or a 24% and get up to 550. That's a nice little jump for us. So next slide. Okay, here's the value line, and I was looking at it. Look how much they premium earned per share is going to go from $167.25 to $183, which is at least a 10% gain there that they're adding in there. Their underwriting costs are going down. Earnings per share is going up. Dividends per share are going to go up a little bit. Book value going from 195.45 all the way out to 233. That's not too shabby because that's like, 12% or something there. And look how it had been. If you go back to 2022, it was only $104, and then going to 233. That's a big fat double. Shares outstanding are pretty consistent. Annual PE, it says here by the value line is 11. At the top of the slide previous, we said that the PE is 5. If the PE is going to go from 5, that's what Yahoo has it. Next slide. And it's going to go to 11.5. It's doubling. That's PE expansion, which means you got price expansion. They're earning more money for each premium on each contract written for their insurance. That's going up. Underwriting margin of profit. They're writing so many insurance. They're writing so many policies that they may have a little bit less of a gain because I think they're also taking into account, because this can be catastrophic if we go into bad weather, and I hope that the hurricane season doesn't hit me down here too much. The net profit is going up from 1865, 1925 to 2400. That's a nice little, big jump there. Return on shareholder equity, I like to have a minimum of at least 12%, and it keeps saying 19.3, 18.5, 18.17. You can see when we had bad weather and when we had COVID, we didn't have very good return on shareholder equity. So all those numbers look good for me, and this is what also drew me to the stock. Next page. So they've had a lot of gains because they just bought another company, and this is a serial acquirer, and they had bought the Valdez business, and they've incorporated in there, and so their premiums jumped 46%. They're thinking that this is going to keep growing up, and they anticipate similar results for this year in 24 as well as 25. They felt that the timely shares offered significant upside over 18 months in the 3 to 5 year time frame. When I got the, I'll be honest, I was a TD American person, and now I have to be Schwab, and so I'm learning how to read the Schwab research reports. The CIFR report said that, next slide. I like where the very bottom it says our 12-month target price of 265 assumes the shares will trade at 7.1 times our 2024 earnings per share estimate, 6.9 at 2025 versus their 3-year average. Their average multiple is 8.4, and their multiple is going down, which means price is going to go up. And their average for their peers is 10. That's capital expansion. That's stock expansion, folks. So next slide. This is what was on Manifest. They felt the par could be 22.8% and the quality was 98. So you've got good quality. You've got good potential annual return. I thought it all looked good. I hope you guys would consider voting and being nice to me and voting on R&R instead.
Okay. Little lobbying going on tonight. All right, now we're going to switch gears to talk about lasers and Matt Spielman, and he regaled the audience with stories of autonomous driving in Chicago. Take us away, Matt.
Yeah, I wish, in fact, I learned afterward that Volvo, who is Luminar's first production volume customer, was bringing EX90s for driving for public introduction, but a week too late. So
I saw
almost. That was pretty good. So the preface for the preface is 2 days before Bing. Oh no, I get go back a slide.
Go back a slide. Okay.
Yeah. 2 days before Bing, Ken asked me if I would be willing, and I'm always willing. This is the fun part, to put a Luminar presentation together, and so that he had been interested in it. So I thought, sure, that's fun. That's pretty spicy for most audiences, but that's fun. And then I found out Thursday in the Thursday evening stock panel, after 2 rounds of very rational core stock holdings, there's a lightning round of non-core holdings, and the very last company uttered was Ken uttering Luminar. That was Thursday night, and the roundtable was the last presentation on Saturday. So for the next 2 days, as I randomly sat at different tables among 2s and 3s, introduced myself, I heard a lot of whispering about, what's this laser? What did you find out about it? People were researching it during the meals, and I thought, this is really kind of getting out of hand. They were sort of throwing caution to the wind, as well as about 3/4 of the education they were getting that weekend. But I would go back, and I said, I said, hey, just take in mind on Saturday, go to the round table, and we're going to talk about it, because they had no idea that I even knew anything about it. So that was the preface of the preface.
Well, I'm wondering, Matt, was there any evidence that Ken had been consuming adult beverages before the panel discussion, or this is out of character?
You were closer to him, so I'm not sure if I'll answer that question. So
I'm sitting right here, guys. It's okay.
I do own this stock. I know Ken owns this stock. In fact, it's $1.64, Ken. You're up a penny, right?
I own it too.
I'm actually down 4 cents, Matt.
Okay, so we're all in the. I'm down quite a bit. I did participate. This was a SPAC IPO back in fourth quarter 2020. Although I did buy below the IPO price, I also bought in 2 somethings in the bottom of 2022, and I bought some recently. But I did have to begin the convention presentation asking forgiveness from George Nicholson for having sinned and tempting Ken into this speculation. This is a little bit different than the first slide. On the left, we have the sirens going. This is not a pre-revenue company, so it's not price to hope. It is pre-profit. I did not include the SSG. I thought it wasn't even useful, but given how much people took to it, I figured I'd put it in there. And I'll turn this chart, rather than picking on Pat, I'm going to turn this chart up, straight, and lonely, because it's only revenue. It doesn't have any earnings to accompany it on its incline yet.
All by itself. Okay.
What a particularly impressive price pattern here too.
It's more of a bargain every year. All right,
there you go.
So where did I first find this out? In the summer of 2020 on the bull sessions, after I was just back from Ireland, actually. So I was just getting back into the groove of things here. There was a book study of Life After Google by George Gilder, and he had 2 main themes in the book. One was the loss of our privacy and the opportunity that blockchain, the technology behind cryptocurrencies, might do to give us back our control over ourselves. The other one was sort of a lament that Silicon Valley had become Software Valley, that there was a general assumption that for whatever you wanted to do, you could take whatever hardware was available and sort of software your way into a fix. But George included in a profile, there's 2 quotes here on the left about Austin Russell, who's the founder and CEO of Luminar, who founded it in his teens. And particularly the second bullet point came to the core principle that in order to really improve safety, not just match what humans can do, but improve safety, you had to give cars 7 seconds lead time in order for them to react. And that really meant distance, particularly if you're thinking about going at highway speeds instead of surface street speeds. Distance was everything, and so that was the core of his idea for the company. Next slide. So what is LIDAR? LIDAR is an acronym that sort of mirrors radar. It's light detection and ranging. You can see on the right-hand side, it gives you sort of a pixelated view. They call this a point cloud. But of course, our pattern-seeking brains could figure out that there was a double-decker tourist bus, some boats on a dock, and then now a street scene with some trees on the side. So this is a supplemental vision system. It's an active vision system, so it doesn't depend on ambient light to figure things out. It tends to have better performance through bad weather, where you'd say fog, snow, or rain. And it can be in many form factors. Luminar is specifically focused on automotive. A lot of its competitors are sort of in adjacent things like the little pizza delivery robots or other things like that. There's some discussion, there's also military uses as additional sensors, and even for installation, so building scale ones to sort of have someone looking around the building all the time. And if you have an iPhone 12, you have a LiDAR too. That's used natively for focusing, for better focus of pictures, but you can actually download apps, do your own 3D scanning with your iPhone if you wanted to play around with it. Next slide. So as I mentioned, I called this a supplemental sensor system. There's certainly one of the biggest players, Tesla, and particularly Elon Musk has said they want to go vision only. They're sort of trying to replicate, you drive with 2 eyes, they want to drive with 2 eyes. But they are very nearly alone with that. Rather than saying that any one thing is better than another, and that is in a lot of ways a cost measure, that's also some of that software valley mentality. The auto industry has for a long time had overlapping and complementary sensor systems. And you can see here the ultrasound sensors with parking assist, even radars. My former company did some early work with automotive radars, and that was in the early 2000s. So they are 20 years old on a car. And then of course LiDAR looking very far out, and cameras, so light sensitive cameras. The safest thing you can do, the most featureful thing you can do, is use them all and let them complement each other's strengths, or complement with their strengths others' weaknesses, as well as have some redundancy in case some of them get disabled for whatever reason. Next slide. So this is a little bit different slide, looking to compare Luminar with its competitors. There's a really dichotomy in what an automotive LiDAR supplier does. The commodity hardware guys use lasers, off-the-shelf lasers that are in the 900 nanometer range, generally 905 to 990. So think of things that you'd find in your laser printer, things like that. Really, it's because they can be based on silicon, so cheap integrated circuit material. Luminar, along with a very few others, uses 1550, and you can see here that there's an implied detection range improvement with the yellow, and Iris and Iris Plus are Luminar's models, but other ones. But really, when you have higher range, you have those 7 seconds, you can go faster speed. Here's the rub. The reason why why it says in the red letters why there's a 9xx nanometer physics limit is because that 900 nanometer range reacts with your eyes, and if they used a certain power or more, it would blind everything in front of them, everything human at least, and so obviously that's a safety issue. So there is a firm wall, or call it a cliff if you want, that they're only going to work so far. I put the Mercedes logo on here too. Mercedes actually came out, it was in Germany late last year, but earlier this year, with the first production level 3 autonomy system. So this is hands off, eyes off. You can't go to sleep, you can't get out of your chair, but you could read in the car. It's available in the US and California and Nevada. There are a number of parameters you have to fulfill though. So some of them are, you can only use them on certain highways, and the highways being not, that just mapped well. And then the second one is you can only use them up to 40 miles per hour, which is approximately 65 kilometers an hour. Obviously, that means you can only use them in traffic. And California does have traffic, but a lot of people driving a lot of miles would want to use them in the full highway speed. So Mercedes-Benz, just under 2 years ago, announced that they were moving their whole vehicle lineup. And this is not just autonomous vehicles, not just electrical, their whole lineup to Luminar LiDAR because of, to my interpretation, because of this limitation. They were using a system from Vallejo, which is a tier 1 automotive supplier, the only one that developed their own LiDAR in-house. And they were in that 9XX limit, and they can only go so fast. So you have to get over on the other side. Now, I mentioned in terms of the other companies that do use this same technology, I mentioned AI, that's AEYE.ai, so A like your eyeball eye.ai. There are a couple others. There's AVA, AEVA, which is very small. In a small world, they're very small. The other thing is that I really was remiss not to mention is Aurora. Aurora Innovation is a company focusing on autonomous semis, and in fact actually works with the semi-truck divisions that Luminar works with the car division. So Volvo semis and Daimler truck are with Aurora. So those are, let's say, credible or significant competition, but they all have their niches. So just how fast can you go? On the right-hand side, I have a picture. Luminar is the universal sensor of choice for the Indy Autonomous Challenge. So when you have the simplified route of an oval racetrack, you can actually go 180, 190 miles an hour with it. Next slide. So this is kind of a bonus, and there's always some caveats if you're investing looking at regulation. Just ask anyone who is following Ardelyx. But just earlier this month, the NHTSA, the National Highway Transport Safety Administration, has mandated a certain capability automatic emergency braking system for all cars in the US by 2029. Now, if you think that's a long way off, that's probably in the early engineering stage for every manufacturer now. They're probably working very hard on 2028. 2027 is set in stone and being industrialized. So this is just around the corner. If you look into customers, none of Luminar's customers has signed up with them because of this. But at this point, Luminar is the only system that today meets those standards out of the gate. There, of course, can be lobbying. You may not have heard there's actually an election this year. Of course, this is just a regulation, so things can be changed. But this is a significant point of potential upside for the company. In just a sec, Mark's going to click the black square or the black rectangle on the right is a demonstration at the Computer Electronics Show, CES, or Consumer Electronics Show, of a crash simulation with a stationary child with a black Luminar equipped vehicle and a white Tesla Model Y. You can see the Tesla hits it. Now, I'll say this is actually probably the best performance the Tesla has because it actually does start to brake, even though it doesn't brake in time. There are a number of other scenarios where it just plows right through. And to be fair to Tesla, this is not an indictment of either autopilot or FSD. This is simply with the base emergency, automatic emergency braking on. And if you see the full video on the bottom, you can also see a Lexus and a GMC and several other cars plow right through. And the important part is this: if you make this emergency stop and you save the child's life, you have to think about what the next car behind you is, right? You might be causing yourself a rear end collision because the next car might not catch it in time to go through. So it's very important when you're thinking about these systems, and anyone who's experienced these systems, it's just as bad to have a false positive as a false negative. You certainly don't want to hit the child or the obstacle in the road. You also don't want to stop for no reason at all when you basically surprise every other car. The reason these are children, Luminar has been demonstrating this since 2022, so they've had 3 CESs to demonstrate on. The old ones used to use adult dummies. They're now children because there's a particular issue with vision-only systems, let's say it that way. And that is without true depth perception, because they're trying to synthesize depth perception. There's not much difference between a child that's very close to you and an adult human that's quite a distance away. And having to balance whether or not you really have something close to you or it's a false alarm takes too much computational time, and you end up with a hit. Now the industry had lobbied, or some in the industry had lobbied, to actually be allowed to hit the child at 25 kilometers per hour. That's not good news. So there was also an expectation that this might be simply required to get a 5-star safety rating beginning in 2029. So some people were surprised this became a requirement. I think that's actually a very good win, if you will, for the company and for the technology to save the lives. Because if it's simply a safety requirement and you cause a rear end collision because you do this, you might be tested in a legal setting whether or not you have some responsibility for that. As a government requirement, they sort of have better shielding to say, no, we really want to save lives. So this is not reflected in the order book or any customer account. That's upside for the company. Okay. So this next one on the left is the original business plan from the IPO, circa 2020. And you can see projections through 2025, which the company said was going to be their break-even year. They would turn GAAP profitable in 2025 with about $837 million in total revenue. You can see there's a green hardware side and a blue software side. They actually do not just make the sensor, they make integrations to help interpret the data and take action, as in the emergency braking. On the right-hand side is my markup. So in the Q1 earnings call, the company said, of course, they've already started production with Volvo. They will be on 100% their standard equipment on the Volvo EX90. They are not on the EX30, which is also coming out this year, but going forward, Volvo has committed for them to be standard equipment across the company's product lines. In 2025, and notice I've skipped 2025 in my markups, comes a customer called Polestar, which is a corporate cousin of Volvo. They're both owned by Geely. That they will not be standard equipment. They're not big in the US. They actually are quite big in Europe, as well as in South America. But I've not included them in the ramp up here just because it's harder to know exactly what that will contribute. The other big news, and you have to understand, in the automotive industry, you never lead your OEM partner in announcing any models, right? Model introduction is a big deal. It can be make or break for models. So Luminar is often criticized for not talking more about what their customers are going to do, but that's a big no-no. But they did go so far as to say in 2026, they do expect their first Mercedes model to be launching as well. So I'm predicting, now that's the first one as well, so it will also be standard equipment in Mercedes, of course, because now even more so if 2029 is coming on, but even before then, and across all new Mercedes models. That is not all new Mercedes electric models, that's all models. Autonomous, electric, gas, anything. That's true for Volvo and true for Mercedes. So I'm predicting, and this has not been the the management is due to have an update on their on this chart, essentially on their guidance in the second quarter. They just took an action in the first quarter, actually just before their earnings call, to lay off a number of people. They're doing more outsourcing of manufacturing and industrialization than they'd initially planned in order to conserve cash. But essentially this means it's a 2-year delay in their break even. And so they need to fund that. The stock was $3 and change, almost $4 early this year, until a Bank of America analyst predicted that they would need to raise $1 billion in order to fund this gap. This is a company that right now is about $700 million market cap. The company management on the Q1 call said that would be around 200 to 300 million total, including retirement of a $650 million convertible offering they have. What that will be, who knows, but the most speculative part of the speculative company is just how big a restructuring, or not restructuring, but capital raise will this company need, and what will that dilution mean to current shareholders? So beware of that amount. All right, and that was in 7 slides. The second mistake that Ken made is he gave me 10 slides to talk about in the convention. 7. I've only given you 7 here. I've given you the 3 backup so you don't miss anything just because you weren't there. That is Luminar.
And they are looking forward to saving people insurance dollars.
Yeah, that's how deeply this company is not just a tech company. They've actually set up. Now, we talked about insurance. That was the fun thing about the convention too, is they really had a lot of similar themes. They have set up their own brokerage to offer insurance with Swiss Re as their reinsurance partner to insure vehicles that have their equipment on them. That's sort of how they're putting their money where their mouth is on this safety amount. It also allows them to harvest, you can see in the lower left, so they expect $900 savings per year based on Swiss Re's data, or $9,000 over the life of the car, in lower insurance costs, better safety, lower insurance costs. So they want to capture that to the point where insurance is a industry slow to change and wouldn't give them credit for it. They're going to go in and actually take that money and monetize that and help fund their growth. This is not a far off thing. They were, as of the Q1 earnings call, they were already licensed in 12 states, and they said they would be in all 50 states by the end of the year.
Wow. All right. Thanks, Matt.
Hey, Mark, I'm going to launch the poll. And folks, you can choose between Luminar. Please remember that we have just these 4 choices, and you're free to choose none of the above. Luminar, Monster Beverage, NAIC, and RenaissanceRe. And we'll take a little bit of time here. We'd love to see about 80–90% of you voting. We have a nice audience tonight, so we should get a fairly representative vote coming up here. You pushed it over 50% voting. Let's keep voting, folks. Pushed it over 60. Pushed it over 70. Let's keep voting. Let's see if we can get up to 90% plus, okay? Doesn't cost you anything. You can only vote once. Keep bringing those votes in. We're almost to 80% right now.
They're having a tougher time deciding this month. I like it.
Yes, they are. Up to 82%. I'm going to give you about 10 more seconds, then I'm going to close it down. I don't want my colleagues to tell me that I did anything that was cheating here, so I'm going to give you all the time I possibly can give you. But I'm going to close the poll right now. But we ended up with 83% voting. And let me share the results. And I think that, Mark, we might call it close enough. At convention, folks, you'll be interested to hear that Monster came in first with RenaissanceRe, a very close second. And here tonight, we have Monster coming in first with NAIC, a very close second. So, Mark, what do you think? 1,000 into each?
Yeah, I think I'd have won if my CEO hadn't resigned.
I need to register the other anecdotal evidence that despite the vociferous boos in the audience, I wasn't allowed to participate at.
That's right.
I didn't want to allow Luminar, that highly speculative stock, to be part of the poll at a live convention, but I got booed. So we'll be adding $1,000 to all 4 stocks, each one of them, and then an extra 1,000 to Monster Beverage and to NAIC, Mark's business company here, the AI business company. So let's see if we can go back to the end of the session here now. Let's hide, and one more slide, and it takes us to our YouTube channel. We've been putting everything that we do for the last 14 plus years onto this YouTube channel. You can reach it by going YouTube Manifest Investing, YouTube Roundtable Manifest Investing. Almost any way I'll get you to this channel. Once you get there, we would love for you to subscribe to our channel. If you're not already a subscriber, that helps us. And we're over 1,000 now, and we're moving towards 1,200. So we'd love to have you subscribe. You can see any of our past presentations right here, and there's a lot of them. And this one will be posted within the next 24 to 36 hours. It will appear on our YouTube channel as well. We're so happy to have had you with us. Mark, do we have any coming events? I'm not sure that we're traveling anywhere in the next month at least, are we?
No, we're going to do a couple of roundtables, and then we will be discussing other venues shortly too. I did want to point out that this particular session here, if you want to do a sample of a session and you have any curiosity about NVIDIA, it's a pretty good discussion of NVIDIA. That's back from March 19th. And have some fun with that. I only have the 2 roundtables on there for now. I do have an invitation to do a cyber presentation for Tucson, Arizona in August that we need to discuss, Ken. And then I will add, are you participating in the Atlanta Investor Fair?
No, I was there last year. You don't go 2 years in a row, so I'm not going this year. Are you going to Atlanta? That would be good.
I'll put it on there because I know a couple of our people are. I think Kevin probably is too. So I'll put
great
next year list. But that's in early August, and you can find out more information on that by going to the Georgia chapter page at Better Investing.
Okay, so we did run just a few minutes over tonight, but we're happy to have you stay with us. And Matt, I want to thank you very much for stepping in and explaining a stock that has suddenly become very interesting to a lot of folks in our community. I think that it's not one of our core holdings by any means, but it has a lot of very interesting possibilities going into the future. I'd like to thank Mark as usual. Mark, we just can't do any of this without your help, and a big thanks to Kim as well. Kim has been very loyal to the program as well as a lot of the other folks that come and help us out month after month after month. And to you, the audience that supports us like this, we can't tell you how much we appreciate you because it's without bounds. We just are so thankful that you're with us so often. And with all that, I'm going to say good night and offer you all the opportunity to say good night. And we hope we see you a month from now at the June Roundtable.
Good night, everybody.
Everyone.
Thanks for playing nice.